Imagine writing, 969 detailed journal entries about a single patch of dirt in your backyard.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a lot of dirt to cover.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, most of us struggle to keep a daily planner updated for like a week.
I know, I definitely do.
So welcome to this custom deep dive.
Yeah.
Our mission today, for you listening, is to explore this really fascinating slice of life and science from a source provided by one of our listeners.
Yeah, and it's a really specific source, too.
It is. It's a blog post titled Notes on Gardening, Part 969, and the subtitle is The Unexpected Honey Melon or Cucumis-melo Sprouts.
Such a great title.
Right. It was written by an author named Ang on July 28, 2026. And what could you possibly discover on day 969 of chronicling your garden that completely shatters a universally accepted, centuries-old piece of agricultural dogma?
Well, reaching part 969 of anything requires a level of meticulous observation that frankly borders on the scientific method.
Totally. You're not just casually planting seeds anymore.
Exactly. At that point, you aren't merely planting seeds and hoping for the best, right? You are a devoted chronicler of microecosystems.
Yeah, you see all the little things.
You notice the tiny, seemingly insignificant variables that everyone else just ignores. And in this particular entry, the author's keen eye turns a totally mundane kitchen task into this masterclass on botanical physics.
So we have to set the scene a bit chronologically to understand how this simple kitchen task turns into like full-on myth-busting.
Right, let's get into the timeline.
Yeah, so in a previous entry, which was part 966, the author harvested some honey melon seeds. The scientific name they use is cucumis-melo.
Cucumis-melo, right.
So they wash them and naturally dry them out because usually, you scoop seeds out of a melon, you dry them, and you just toss them in a jar for next spring.
Yeah, it's supposed to be this dormant, sleeping package of potential, just waiting for the right time.
But Ang made a rather startling discovery this time. The source notes that almost immediately upon removal from the fruit, these seeds began to sprout.
Which is wild. The sheer speed of that biological reaction caught the author entirely off guard.
I mean, I would be surprised too.
For sure. The photos mentioned in the text apparently show some of these seeds rapidly pushing out rather long roots, like right there on the kitchen counter.
Just sitting there on the counter.
Yeah, they bypass the whole dormant phase entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because my immediate thought as a listener is about the environment inside the fruit itself.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. Because a melon is basically this dark, wet, warm, nutrient-dense cave.
It's essentially the perfect incubator.
Exactly. To a seed, that environment has to be virtually indistinguishable from a patch of rich, damp soil in the middle of spring. So why don't they just sprout while they're still inside the melon?
Right, it seems like they should.
Is the mother plant, like, actively poisoning its own seeds to keep them asleep?
Well, not poisoning, but she is actively chemically restraining them. Absolutely.
Chemically restraining them?
Yeah. If you think about the evolutionary biology at play here, a seed germinating inside the parent fruit is committing ecological suicide.
Because it's trapped.
Exactly. It's completely trapped. Even if it sprouts, it has zero sunlight for photosynthesis, and it will just rot right alongside the decomposing food.
Oh, yeah, that makes total sense.
Right. The entire biological imperative of a fruit is to be eaten by an animal, carried far away, and deposited in new territory.
So the plant has to build a system that basically says, do not wake up until you are far away from me.
Precisely.
And our source points to a very specific piece of anatomy that acts as the control mechanism for this restraint.
Yeah, and it's a term people might recognize from human biology.
Right. The author calls it the placenta.
And we need to use that exact term because it perfectly describes the function here. The text defines this placenta as the fibrous, thread-like network sitting right in the middle of the hollow center of the fruit.
It's that stringy, messy orange web you encounter when you cut open a cantaloupe or a honeydew.
Yep, that exact part.
The part you usually take a metal spoon to and just violently scrape right into the compost bin without a second thought.
Which is honestly a tragic lack of appreciation on our part.
I feel a little guilty now, honestly.
Well, you should. Considering that stringy, messy bit is a highly sophisticated life support and regulatory system.
Wow.
While the seeds are developing, that fibrous network is constantly feeding them moisture and nutrients. But crucially, it is simultaneously pumping them full of inhibitory hormones.
So it's feeding them, but also keeping them asleep.
Exactly. The mother plant uses that thread-like umbilical cord to actively suppress the seed's metabolic trigger.
Okay, so it's acting like a botanical safety harness, holding them in suspended animation.
Yes, a perfect way to put it.
And the moment Aang took that spoon and scooped those seeds out of the placenta, that chemical tether was severed.
Yep, the safety harness was unbuckled.
So the supply of inhibitors just immediately crashes.
Exactly. And because those seeds are suddenly sitting out in the open, fully developed, still covered in moisture, but no longer chemically restrained,
Their internal alarms just go off.
the biological brakes are completely gone, the seed recognizes it is detached, and the cellular machinery basically screams, "Go."
Hence the immediate sprouting and those long roots appearing out of nowhere on the kitchen counter.
Yeah, it's just doing what it's programmed to do without the brakes on.
It is staggering how aggressively nature reacts once those chemical restraints are removed.
It really is.
But this aggressive growth creates an immediate logistical problem for Aang.
A huge problem if you're trying to save them.
Right. You cannot take a seed that has just pushed out a long, delicate root, toss it into a paper envelope, and throw it in a dark desk drawer for 6 months.
No, it will rapidly use up its energy reserves and die.
So if the author actually wants to store these seeds for later use, they have to figure out how to slam the brakes back on.
And the author outlines 2 preventative measures they recommend to halt this rapid germination process.
I really love how low-tech these solutions are, especially compared to the complex hormonal suspension system we just talked about.
Oh yeah, they're super practical.
Aang says if you want to harvest and keep the seeds, you just wash them and then dry them thoroughly with a kitchen paper towel.
Simple as that.
Or, alternatively, you simply let them dry naturally under the hot, blazing sun.
And we should dig into the cellular shift happening when you deploy that hot, blazing sun because it's fascinating.
Yeah, let's get into that.
It sounds like a quaint, rustic piece of advice, right? But you are effectively orchestrating a traumatic, forced hibernation.
Traumatic.
Yeah. A seed requires a very specific threshold of internal moisture to power the metabolic engines that drive growth.
Okay.
When you lay them out in the blazing sun, you are causing rapid desiccation. You are literally violently evaporating the water right out of the seed cells.
So you are basically stealing the fuel for the germination engine.
Exactly. Without that internal moisture, the cellular machinery simply cannot function.
So it just stops.
Right. The seed's metabolic rate drops to near zero. It doesn't die, though. Seeds are remarkable extremophiles capable of surviving profound dehydration.
That is so cool.
Instead of dying, it just enters a state of deep static dormancy. You are basically freezing time by removing the water.
Wow. And it is through this very practical, tactile instruction of drying the seeds that the author weaves in this really wonderful grounding human element.
Yeah, the nostalgia aspect.
Exactly. This physical process of washing them and laying them out triggers a wave of nostalgia for Aang. The text describes how this routine reminds them of their parents.
I love that part.
Yeah, their parents always harvested vegetable seeds and let them dry naturally under the hot sun. The author specifically notes their parents doing this for large seeds, like those of the honeydew melon.
It serves as a beautiful reminder of how human agriculture has operated for, well, millennia.
Right. Way before modern science.
Aang's parents likely didn't have access to laboratory equipment to measure the drop in inhibitory hormones when a seed is severed from a fibrous placenta, right?
Definitely not.
And they didn't need a peer-reviewed paper to understand the cellular desiccation process.
They just relied on observable cause and effect.
Generation after generation noticed that if you leave the seeds wet, they sprout and die in the jar.
And if you put them in the blazing sun, they sleep until you put them in the dirt next spring.
Exactly.
We sit here unpacking the intense botanical physics, and the ultimate, highly effective pause button for all of this complex science is just a piece of kitchen paper towel and some old-fashioned generational wisdom.
Observation usually precedes microscopic understanding,
That's a great way to put it.
which actually sets up the core mystery of this deep dive perfectly, I think, because Aang's powers of observation are about to be put to the test again.
Well, yeah, because Aang currently has a very immediate problem on their hands.
A very sprouted problem.
Right. Despite knowing the ancestral wisdom of how to stop the sprouting, they have a batch of seeds where the safety harness was off just a little too long.
Too late to the sun.
Way too late. The roots are already out. Drying them in the sun now would just kill the exposed roots.
Right, that would be fatal.
So what do you do with seeds that are desperately trying to grow? I mean, you have to plant them.
And the author decides to sow these newly sprouted seeds, and the setting they choose is just wonderfully chaotic.
Oh, it's so relatable.
Right. They aren't placing them in pristine, sterile nursery pods under climate-controlled grow lights or anything like that.
No, Ag mentioned sowing them in some unused seedling trays that were just sitting outside.
Fully exposed to the weather.
And currently growing weeds.
It's just a classic, messy, real-world backyard garden.
You're probably picturing those plastic black trays just left out by the side of the house since last spring. Just gathering rainwater and dandelions.
Oh, I've got a few of those in my yard right now.
But the crucial moment happens right before the seeds actually go into the dirt.
The final wash.
Yeah, Ang mentions a final washing process before taking the seeds outside to plant. And during this wash, they notice a bizarre divergence in how the seeds behave in the bowl of water.
A really stark physical separation.
The sprouted seeds, the ones that had already popped out those long roots, they all plummeted to the bottom of the water and sank.
Straight to the bottom.
But the unsprouted seeds, the ones still fully intact without any visible roots, they stayed bobbing on the surface. They floated.
Which is such a striking visual.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the author uses this exact visual to bring up one of the most widely circulated, universally accepted myths in the gardening community.
The float test.
The famous float test.
Anyone who has ever watched a gardening tutorial or, read a seed catalog has likely encountered this rule.
Yeah, the myth dictates that floating seeds are spoiled, hollow, dead, or otherwise totally useless.
And the sinking seeds are the plump, viable, good ones.
Right. People will literally dump a packet of seeds into a glass of water, skim off everything that floats, throw it straight into the trash, and only plant the ones that sank.
It's brutal.
It offers this incredibly satisfying, clean, binary way to sort the winners from the losers before you even get your hands dirty.
But what's fascinating here is how unequivocally the author dismantles that binary thinking.
Oh, Am just tears it apart.
Ang states firmly that this myth is simply not entirely true. They point out that a massive percentage of perfectly healthy, entirely viable seeds will float on the surface of the water, and throwing them away is a huge mistake.
But as a listener, you have to wonder about the physics of that.
Right, it seems counterintuitive.
If the seed is healthy and full of life, why is it bobbing on the surface like an empty plastic bottle?
Well, it all comes down to the architecture of the seed's outer defenses.
Okay, the outer shell.
Yeah. Ang explains that these healthy seeds float simply because their outer coat has not absorbed enough water yet.
Oh, I see.
Consider what a seed coat is designed to do. It is literal biological armor.
Right.
It has to protect the delicate embryo inside from freezing temperatures, digestive acids of animals, and, extended droughts. It is incredibly tough and highly water resistant.
So the unsprouted seeds are essentially wearing heavy-duty waterproof jackets.
That's exactly it.
The moisture from the bowl of water is just beading up and rolling off the exterior armor.
It takes a significant amount of time for moisture to actually penetrate that protective barrier. Until the water breaches the hull, the seed retains its natural buoyancy.
So it stays floating on top.
Exactly.
But if the unsprouted ones float because they are wearing waterproof armor, we have to look closely at why the sprouted ones plummeted to the bottom.
We do.
Because according to the text, it's not because they're inherently better seeds, right?
Yeah, not at all.
It's because of a physical mechanism that the author provides a very specific scientific term for, which is imbibition.
Imbibition. It is a fantastic word that describes a violent, transformative process.
Violent.
Yeah, it literally translates to water absorption, but in botany, it specifically refers to the massive physical uptake of water by a seed, causing it to swell dramatically.
Wow, okay.
It is the critical, non-negotiable first step in the germination sequence.
We really need to break down the exact physical mechanics described in the text here, step by step, because understanding imbibition completely rewrites our understanding of the sinking and floating behavior.
It really changes everything.
According to Ang, the reason the sprouted seeds sank is that they had already undergone this massive water uptake.
And the physical proof of that imbibition is the root itself protruding from the seed.
The root is the proof.
Right. The author uses the technical botanical term for this very first embryonic root, which is the radicle.
Wait, hold on. I am trying to visualize the physics of this in the bowl of water.
Okay, let's picture it.
If the unsprouted seed is basically a tightly sealed submarine floating on the surface because its waterproof hull is intact,
Yes.
then the radicle, that embryonic root, is essentially a breach in the hull.
A breach initiated from the inside, driven by the swelling pressure of imbibition.
So the sprouted seed is a submarine that has deliberately opened its valves.
Exactly.
The text specifically points out that because the root broke through the coating, water rushed in through the breach. And when the water rushes in, it displaces the internal air pockets.
The internal air pockets are serving as the submarine's ballast tanks.
It's pure, simple physics.
It really is just physics.
The water forces its way through the crack made by the radicle, pushes the trapped air out of those internal pockets, and the seed simply loses its buoyancy.
Yeah.
It purposely sinks.
Yep.
It doesn't sink because it is morally good or biologically superior, and the floaters aren't inherently bad or dead.
No.
The sprouted seed sinks because its physical architecture has fundamentally changed. It opened its valves, filled its ballast tanks with water, and sank to the sea floor.
It totally flips the common wisdom on its head, doesn't it?
It really does.
The floating seeds aren't spoiled. They just haven't opened their valves yet. They haven't gone through imbibition.
They're just waiting.
Yeah, they are simply sealed submarines, biding their time on the surface, waiting for the water to finally wear down and penetrate that tough outer coat.
Removing the moral judgment we place on the seeds, this idea that nature presents us with a clean batch of good seeds and bad seeds, is incredibly liberating.
I agree completely.
It replaces a flawed piece of folklore with actual mechanics. A floating seed is just a seed that is still highly defended.
Beautifully said.
And this incredible realization was sparked entirely by someone just paying close attention to a bowl of tap water in their backyard garden.
It really highlights how quick we are to make swooping assumptions based on superficial observations, you know?
Oh, 100%.
We see something float, we immediately label it dead, and we throw it in the trash without ever bothering to understand the invisible microscopic mechanics happening inside that tiny organism.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener, and for our incredibly observant gardener, Ang?
Let's recap.
Yeah, let's trace the surprising journey we've been on today. We started by marveling at the sheer dedication of an author writing their 969th gardening entry.
Which is still just amazing to me.
We uncovered the explosive speed of a melon seed desperate to grow the second it was removed from the inhibitory hormones of the fibrous placenta. And then we contrasted that complex botanical chemistry with the generational wisdom of using a paper towel and the hot blazing sun to force a seed into sudden desiccation and dormancy.
And we followed those seeds that missed the pause button out to the weedy seedling trays.
The chaotic backyard tray.
Exactly. During the final wash, we confronted the pervasive myth of the float test. We learned that unsprouted seeds float because their protective armor hasn't absorbed water.
Because they're wearing waterproof jackets.
Right, while the sprouted seeds sink because of imbibition. The radicle breaches the hull, water displaces the internal air pockets, and the seed voluntarily loses its buoyancy.
The submarine sinks itself.
Exact.
And as for what happens next in the physical world of the source text, Ang leaves us with a wonderful sense of suspense.
A real cliffhanger.
Yeah. They went ahead and planted all of those seeds, both the sprouted sinkers and the unsprouted floaters, into those unused, weather-beaten seedling trays that were currently growing weeds.
The author's final sentiment is a true testament to the scientific mindset.
How so?
They note that they are leaving the seeds in those trays to see how they grow, and crucially, to observe whether the remaining floating seeds will eventually sprout.
Just giving them time.
There is no rush to label them as failures, just patience, observation, and a willingness to let the seeds do the work on their own timeline.
It is the ultimate low-stakes cliffhanger for part 969.
It really is.
Will the floating seeds finally undergo imbibition? Will they let the water breach their armor, fill their ballast tanks, and join the sprouted ones in the dirt?
We'll have to wait for part 970 to find out.
We really will. But before we leave you today, we want to offer one final thought for you to carry with you, building on this fascinating botanical discovery.
A little something to mull over.
Yeah. We spent this time exploring how a seed's natural buoyancy is merely a temporary physical state of trapped air, not a definitive sign that it is spoiled or useless.
Buoyancy is simply a state of waiting for the right conditions to change the internal structure.
Which makes you wonder, if a floating seed is just waiting for its moment to let the water in and break through, how many perfectly viable seeds in our own lives are we throwing away?
That's a great question.
Think about the ideas you've pitched at work, or the creative projects you've started in your garage, or even the new habits and relationships you've tried to cultivate.
We've all been there.
How many of those have you discarded prematurely, tossing them out like bad seeds simply because they haven't yet reached their moment of imbibition?
Thrown in the trash before they had a chance.
Right. Maybe those ideas aren't hollow. Maybe they aren't spoiled.
Maybe they just haven't absorbed enough time, resources, or energy to break through their protective coating yet.
Exactly. Maybe, just like Aang's unsprouted melon seeds bobbing on the surface, they just need a little more time to soak.
And a lot more patience from us.
Right, before they finally open their valves, sink in, and take root. Keep exploring, keep questioning the myths you've been handed, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.